Good evening, everyone. How are we doing? I am Chris, and I am back with the final review on the Rings of Power. We have reached episode 8, Alloyed, I believe it's called. And thank Eru, this show is finished for now. I believe it will return in a few years' time. They are filming, I think, or in production at least on season 2, with possibly 5 seasons in total on the way. But thankfully, the pain, I feel like Frodo. Actually, I tweeted about this earlier. I used the gif from the end of Return of the King. Um, Frodo, after he's just destroyed the ring and he's just disheveled, is like, it's over, it's done. And that's what I feel like after watching this show. But you know what? I've had fun watching this show in a weird way. Not for the show. The show is terrible and awful and an absolute atrocity to the memory and the legacy of Tolkien in almost every single conceivable way. But I have had a lot of fun reviewing this each week and getting to talk Lord of the Rings and Middle-earth with you guys, having some fun along the way because, as I said last week, if we don't laugh, we'll cry, right? So we're all here, which is great. So Lord Oakenshield as well says, tell them Sauron lives because of you. And you will die because of me. Rah! I died of cringe when this happened. This series is cringe. You're not wrong, mate. You're not wrong. And we've got everything in Middle-earth as well. He says, I wish I could join. I really wish you could have joined as well, because I think this would have been a really fun discussion. He live streamed earlier, which I tuned in for a bit of. I think, unfortunately, it's been taken down due to copyright from the Amazon overlords. But hopefully me and him get to chat about it at some point, because I'd love to have an in-depth discussion with him. Tara Lenny and Moranway says, no crying. I will not say do not weep, although I think the tears would be an evil in the case of this show, because Amazon is evil. I think, you know what? I think this show, The Rings of Power, is the worst thing to happen to Middle-earth since Morgoth. And that's saying something. I think this has definitely done more damage than perhaps the Dark Lord himself. We've got Carl in the comments. Thanks for tuning in. It was slowly but surely we're building up the full house of people in tonight. So hopefully we get some more in as well, because, as I said, this is going to be... Is it going to be the final discussion? I don't know. I'm going to open it up to you guys. So I was going to click this at the end, but I'm still debating whether to or not. But I am going to miss these Fridays. I must admit, I am going to miss talking about Lord of the Rings in some capacity. And I'm going to miss you guys as well, because otherwise there's going to be almost a month and a half void of Tolkien content on the channel, because it's the 10th anniversary in December for the first Hobbit movie, and I want to do some coverage on the Hobbit and talk about that, maybe a commentary on the first film, maybe just like an overall analysis review on it, maybe even a watch along of my edit. But I've got a lot planned this December for the Hobbit specifically. But I was considering doing this, so don't take this. But if you guys would be interested in this, would you be interested in like a complete season 1 review of the Rings of Power? I don't know if you guys would be into that, because I know week to week we've talked about all the individual episodes, and I'm sure season 1 might just be a case of repeating. But if I can get everything in Middle-earth on that would hopefully be me and him. That would be Friday the 21st of October at 11. If you don't see there's any point in that, then do let me know, because obviously we have already talked about it. But I just think it might be a way where, if you guys aren't doing anything on another Friday, we get to talk about some more Lord of the Rings in a way. But let me know if you think it would be pointless. Let me know. That's just me kind of extending that offer out there in case people were interested in watching more Lord of the Rings videos. Lord Oakenshield says, I'm amazed that people who defend this series are still making theories about Meteor Man, pretending he's not Gandalf. They're clearly overestimating the intelligence of the writers. I mean, we all knew it was Gandalf right from the off. And if anyone did have any discrepancies about that, or maybe they thought it could be someone else, by the end of this episode, certainly it highlights that completely by more repurposed dialogue from the Lord of the Rings, which is always wonderful and shows the lack of creativity on the part of Amazon here. Tara Lenian says, correction, Galadriel is the worst thing to happen to Middle-earth since Morgoth. Yes, you're absolutely right. A woman who withholds key information like Halbrand being Sauron, the true identity of Sauron, and withholds that information. To what end? I don't know, but we will be talking about that later because that is definitely one of the biggest red flags about this episode for sure. We've got Ecthelion of the Fountain who says, hello. Hello. How are you doing, mate? We've got a lot to talk about. I've got my notes, which you can't see, so I'm going to bump the brightness down. You still can't see it, so I'm going to go in the middle. I will get this right at some point. You guys can't see, but I have a lot of notes. I have so many notes. You have to scroll at least 4 times to get to the bottom of these notes. And hopefully by the end of tonight's live stream, we'll have done just that. Tara Lenny and Maramwe says she brought Sauron into the game. She certainly did. She certainly did. Okay, let's dive into this thing then, because we've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot to dissect and a lot to unpack. We start off in Erin Garland, the Greenwood. Gandalf is traveling. He walked apparently to Greenwood the Great. I can't remember how far the grove was from the Greenwood, but I get the impression it was a hell of a long way away. Whenever he's traveling around in the Hobbit, it's always by horse. The Greenwood is enormous. It's one of the biggest, I think it is the biggest forest landmass in all of Middle-earth. And he walked to it. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised at this point because people just seemingly teleport all over the place, including the Harfoots, which we will get to later. So that was a great start to just reaffirm that the showrunners don't have any concept of time or traveling, and the fact that people can just walk massive swathes of land without provisions, without transport, and they can just walk. And apparently that's exactly, jumping ahead to the end of the episode, that's exactly what Gandalf and Nori are going to do by the end of this episode. And they're going to walk to Rune, the deserts of Rune. They're going to fucking walk it. It's absolutely ridiculous. Lord, I love how we're all jumping around here. That is the meat of the conversation. You're just like, give us the meat and give it to us raw. How did they forge the 3 elven rings first? They're supposed to forge them. They're supposed to forge them last once they discover Sauron's treachery to protect them from the One Ring. It makes no sense. I don't know. I've got a feeling that the 3 elven rings were made first, and then I think Sauron made the One Ring, and then I think they hid the rings from Sauron. And when he couldn't gain mastery over the elven rings, then he went on to the 9 rings for the men and the 7 for the dwarves. And then, of course, the dwarves, being resilient in nature, didn't have exactly the it didn't have the effect that Sauron wanted, but it still did corrupt them in some way. It just amplified their qualities that they already had, making them more greedy, which later on did bring death and ruin upon them from the likes of the dragon. Okay. So Torelenian says the 3 were forged before the 1, but after the 7 and the 9. Okay, I get you. Lord Oakenshield says they were made last without Sauron, Anatar. Yeah, let this just sink in. But after this, we're never going to get Anatar, the Lord of Gifts. Whatever you got today with Halbrand in the forge with Celebrimbor, and then he magically just disappears. That's it. We are not going to get Anatar, Lord of Gifts. Just let that sink in. Sam Oak says, will you be reviewing the films between seasons? Will you be reviewing the films between seasons? That's actually a really good shout. So last year I did a live watch along of Fellowship of the Ring on... I don't think I've got it at hand, actually. I think it's in the other room. I need to go grab that. It was the remastered Blu-rays. And I'd never watched it before. I'd never watched the remastered Blu-ray before, and it was the Fellowship of the Ring with the new color correction on there. And I did a live watch along December last year for the 20th anniversary. This year, of course, is the 20th anniversary of Two Towers. So not only is it the 10th anniversary of The Hobbit, it's also the 20th anniversary of the Two Towers. So for the sake of completion, I will probably be going back and reviewing or doing another watch along of the Fellowship of the Ring in some capacity. So if you guys are interested in that, you've got copies of course, you've got copies of the movies. What am I talking about? I won't have the film on screen, of course, for copyright, but we usually just match it up in terms of the time, get in sync with each other, and hit play. And yeah, it would be great to talk about some more Lord of the Rings. So that's what I'm thinking. December's going to be the Lord of the Rings month for sure. And just the Middle Earth month. So we might have a month off, and then December we're going to hit it hard. So yeah, don't nobody go nowhere. Taralini Maramwe says there were also lesser rings of power, essays in the craft. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. There's not actually a fixed number of rings of power. Of course, you've got the numbered ones, but as you mentioned, there definitely were a lot more that were created. Helena the Fountain says, no sexy Sauron. Oh, Sauron be so sexy. Is it me, or did the rings of power... Sorry, is it me, or did the rings of power rings look cheap? Certainly not of elven craftsmanship. Yeah, so for the amount of callbacks that this show likes to have with its iconography with the Peter Jackson movies, I was expecting to at least see Nenya be identical to the one that we get in the extended cut of Fellowship of the Ring, and it wasn't. So, yeah, most expensive TV show of all time. How many million, how many billion per episode? And it just looks so cheap. Honestly, there were times where this, and actually, I feel like this is a slap in the face to what I'm going to compare it to, because I love these shows. But do you remember those 90s Hercules and Xena Warrior Princess TV shows? There's moments where it looks just as cheap as that. Think back to this, like when we saw those, when we saw Khazad-dûm, for example, in episode 2, you got a room full of maybe like 20 dwarves, a crowd of 20 dwarves. At no other point do you get any sense of scale, of scope, of extras and things like that. I suppose you got the battle at the village with the orcs, but it never felt like a lot. Whenever you're on set with people, it's usually just like a handful of people, like maybe 2 or 3 people on screen together. Most of the time, it's just one actor against one other actor in a given location, and it just feels really small scale. You don't get any sense of scope or scale or anything that justifies the budget, the massive high budget that this show was done. So maybe there was some embezzling going somewhere and hiding the cash. I don't know. Tara Lenian says the stones on them looked overly large, but I will have to look again. I mean, there's plenty of opportunity. The amount of slow-mo shots you get on the rings at the end is just absolutely egregious. It's just absolute ring porn at the end, isn't it? But, that is the namesake of the show, so I'm fine with them lingering on it for a little bit. So Gandalf is walking through Greenwood the Great, and then he is beset by shape-shifting Slim Shady, or Slim Lady, as Nerdrotic likes to call her. And I alternate between calling her Slim Shady and Slim Lady and shape-shifting Slim Lady, depending on when she does that ability. I put, how did they catch up to him so quickly? Gandalf had at least a day or more head start on them, I was under the impression. I know they can teleport, so did they just teleport there? Did they just know he was going to that location and have the ability to just teleport there? Because we did see them with that ability. I don't know if there's a proximity limit on their teleportation ability, or if they can literally just teleport wherever they go. They seem like they're a bunch of traveling nomads. And from what Nerdrotic said, and I may have missed this, because I know they talk about wanting to bring Gandalf back to Rhûn, or bring him to Rhûn. What are we calling them at this point? Are they Istari? Clearly they have to be Maiar in some way, or maybe they're mortals that just have magical ability. One of the things that we learn, and probably based on where this is leading at the end, I'm going to go into my season 2 speculation at the end of the review. When Gandalf and Nori are going off to Rhûn, I think probably next time we'll get the Blue Wizards. I genuinely think that in season 2, we'll get the Blue Wizards in the deserts of Rhûn. There's lots of conflicting reports as to what the Blue Wizards actually did. I think Tolkien reported in one writing that they were instrumental in the downfall of Sauron and helping deal with the massive amounts of Easterlings coming from Rhûn. And they really diminished their numbers. So when the Easterlings did attack the likes of the Lonely Mountain, the numbers weren't as great as they would have been. So they really helped in the victory of the War of the Ring in some capacity. And then there's other writings that say they were the leaders of cults and dark magic and things like that. So I'm thinking maybe it's going to tend in that direction. Clearly, we're going to get to see another culture next time, and they're going to be all evil. But Nerdrotic, I believe, said that the three priestesses or the three cultists, whatever we're going to call them, they're all from Rune. And the one opportunity they had to showcase people of color or people of a different ethnicity, they didn't. And I think one of them kind of looks Mediterranean, maybe, or kind of like Greek. And the other two ladies are just white, just straight up Caucasian. So they didn't use diversity where they should have used diversity, if indeed they are meant to be native to Rune. They kind of fucked that. So that's another thing. Ecthelion says the stones on the rings look massive. Their fingers would fall off if they tried to wear. Yeah, they're going to have like pimp rings, aren't they? They're going to be like knuckle dusters. You know, they call them the rings of power because they possess magical abilities. But also, if you've got a chinner bastard, then you know you can use them for that, I guess, for melee. So these priestesses show up and square off against Gandalf, and they believe that Gandalf is Sauron. And they bow down to him, calling him Lord Sauron. We are here to serve you. And it's just used as a bait and switch, as a red herring to the fact that, trying to distract you from the fact that Halbrand is clearly Sauron. And at this point, they're not fooling anyone. It's actually hilarious that they only wrote that into the script to try and throw you off the scent and to create an air of mystery as to the identity of Sauron. I even saw I don't know if it was a TV spot for this, for the finale, or if it was a trailer or something. And I think it was on Twitter, it was on my Facebook or something. And it was like this overly dramatic trailer. It was like, who is Sauron? And it showed you Gil-galad, it showed you Gandalf, it showed you Halbrand, and a whole bunch of other people. And I thought, was Gil-galad in the running for a potential identity of Sauron? Like, that's just absurd. And they were really, the writers thought this was a genuine mystery as to who Sauron was, which just makes this whole shit show even more laughable. This is the quality of writing that we're talking about here. I think actually one of the writers for today's episode, I don't know if they were the exclusive writers on there, if there was like a collaboration in terms of the writers, but I believe that they worked on Breaking Bad. What the fuck happened? That's all I can say. I have actually seen, believe it or not, which kind of makes me lose hope for the human race, a lot of people being a lot more positive on this episode today. People reaching out to me going, oh, I didn't think this one was as bad. I was like, did you watch the same episode that I did? It's just as bad as all the other ones. Granted, no one got hit in the face with a pyroclastic flow in today's episode, but it still stands. The writing's still shit. Okay, then we have Galadriel riding back to Eregion that they're riding back to, right? They don't ride to Lindon. I'm pretty sure they ride to Eregion. I can't remember. Although Gil-galad's there. Is it Lindon? I don't know, because then Gil-galad like travels to Eregion, doesn't he, later on at the Forge? But I can't remember where they ride to initially. I'm pretty sure it's Eregion. Galadriel rides there with Halbrand in tow. Halbrand, I guess, has finally succumbed to his wounds and is slumped on the horse, not looking as regal or majestic and completely unfazed by an open wound that's apparently going bad. I mean, he is a Maiar, but we're not meant to know this at this point. And we get some more slow motion horse riding with Galadriel with a ridiculous expression on her face again. She then says that it was a 6-day ride without rest, which is just absurd. Regardless of if they're elven horses or whatever they happen to be, horses need rest. Shadowfax is one of the most hardy horses in Middle-earth. He is the hardiest of horses, but he still needs rest. He still needs food, and he still needs water, and probably still needs sleep, although granted not as much as a regular steed. But 6 days ride without rest? I mean, I know time is of the essence, but even that just seems a little bit ridiculous to me. Halbrand has finally showed signs of his wound, yet seemingly in the next scene he's absolutely fine. And I know he's Sauron, but even still, they think he's a mortal man. They don't even question that he apparently has this supernatural healing ability. So I guess that elvish medicine off screen just kicked in almost instantly, and he's absolutely fine. When Frodo got stabbed by the Morgul blade, he was in bed for I don't know how long. He had plenty of time in Rivendell to recuperate. And even that, the wound never fully healed. Granted, that was a Morgul weapon, so it has poisoning abilities, and this was just like a regular orc weapon, but even still. Ecthelion says Gil-galad was jokingly used as a possibility because the writers really fluffed up his characterization beyond recognition. Yeah, they did. They did. He reminds me more of, I think I mentioned this in an earlier review, he reminds me more of Thranduil from the Hobbit films than he does High King Gil-galad. Yet another one of the absolute travesties of this show, just completely ruining Gil-galad's character. Lord Oakenshield says, I don't understand at all how people can call themselves Lord of the Rings fans and enjoy this series. There's still too many people saying this series is amazing, although the writing is atrocious. I agree with you. Now, don't get me wrong. I am on the hill that if people like this series, then they are totally within their right to like the series. I don't agree with their opinion in any way, shape, or form, and I will always ask them. Sorry. Oh, I apologize. I'm getting over an illness, guys. I will always ask them, well, what is it you enjoyed about the episode? What qualities from it did you enjoy? Did you think it was written well? And then obviously I'll always offer a counterpoint to that and kind of highlight loads of moments in the show, which is basically every sentence in the show, as to what highlights not good writing. And I will defend my case and, try and get them to see my opinion. And, I encourage them for me to try and see their opinion. But yes, I agree. If people are a Lord of the Rings fan and not a casual and not a normie and are a diehard Lord of the Rings fan of the movies, of the books, of the entire Legendarium, whatever it happens to be, I also don't understand how they can find enjoyment with this. Now, don't get me wrong, enjoyment can be found in many ways. I like plenty of TV shows, or probably films is a better example, that are absolute trash, and I will admit are not good movies, but I get a lot of enjoyment and a lot of fun out of them. But I will always caveat it with that. I will always say that this isn't a good, this isn't written well, this, perhaps isn't acted well, but I still enjoy it for what it is, whether it's a guilty pleasure film or whether it's nostalgic or whatever it happens to be. I think with this show, there is enjoyment to be had, but it's not positive enjoyment. It's enjoyment at how incompetent this show is, how it's almost a parody of Tolkien. And like, I've had fun just dismantling this series episode by episode at how shit it is, and just laughing at how incomprehensible and how incompetent it all is. How much money's been ferried into this TV show, how much hype, how much marketing, and it's fucking diabolical. In a weird way, that's been kind of fun for me, but it's been fun to vent about this with you guys week to week. The show isn't good, though, in any way, shape, or form. And in fact, if you ask me to find some positives about the show, I would genuinely struggle. I think as a finale of a series as well, just the pacing of it again, it chooses to focus on a certain amount of characters, and we don't get any follow-up from the dwarves in this episode. We don't get any follow-up from Adar in this episode. So there's a lot it's missing out, and it doesn't really feel like a resounding season finale. Again, it feels very pared down. Ecthelion of the Fountain says, interesting, I've heard a lot of people who hated the last episode. I mean, I wish I knew the people that you did, but people have reached out to me saying they really enjoyed it. To which I was just like, please tell me what you enjoyed. Tarelenian says, Nenya looks like one of those gumball machine rings from the 70s. Looking at it now, yeah, you put like a little 20p coin in there and crank the thing, and it comes out in the little plastic egg. Yeah, I know what you mean. Although that was in the 90s for me, not so much the 70s, but it's nice to know that those things have been around for 2 decades. Okay, if we're getting on to that, if Matt from Nerd of the Rings is not happy, says a lot. Let me tell you a tale of Nerd of the Rings. So Nerd of the Rings was my favorite Lord of the Rings channel. And don't get me wrong, I've got nothing against him technically as a person, just his integrity. Obviously, he was one of the ones that flew to London for the 2-episode premiere, as a lot of other people I found out have. And they've just shilled the fuck out of this show. And I've since unsubscribed from Nerd of the Rings. Not that I wanted him necessarily to hate it, but the fact that he just was seemingly okay with everything. A guy who's dedicated his life to Lord of the Rings and the Legendarium, knows it pretty much inside and out, and knows what goes into a good adaptation, and just blindly just ate from the slop that was given to him by Amazon just for the sake of getting clicks. Well, I'm sorry, but I don't like people without integrity. Men of the West is just an absolutely sterling bloke. And the fact that, he went into it and, there was probably a bit of like politics behind it as well. Like he didn't want to piss off his entire fan base. A lot of his comments, he said, have been very on the fence initially. He doesn't want to offend anyone. He wants to keep everything kind of neutral and everyone happy. Obviously, you can't please anyone, as I found doing a YouTube channel, you can't please everyone. But he gave the show a chance at the beginning, which is probably, in all honesty, he gave it more leeway than I did at the beginning, because I knew this was going to be dead on arrival just from everything that I saw. But he gave it a fair shot. He probably had to for his channel to, he's got a lot of subscribers, has Men of the West. But as the weeks have gone on, he's just like, he can't fight it. He's just gone, this is absolutely terrible. This is like the worst adaptation I have ever seen of the works of Tolkien. And even a couple of days ago, he shared some of the fan films that were made, probably about 10 years ago now. Born of Hope, I think, was one of them. I think Hunt for Gollum is another one. I think you can still find these on YouTube. And the fact that those were made by fans at a fraction of the budget that Amazon have to work with, and yet they're much truer to the lore and the spirit of Tolkien than this big budget Amazon show is. And it's just really sad. You think if Amazon actually had the passion for it, and they really had a story they wanted to tell and adapt Tolkien directly from Tolkien, and maybe make some changes here and there, if they need to for the sake of adaptation, but staying true to the themes and the spirit of Tolkien, what we could have got, a 5-season show on the second age of Middle-earth. That could have been, that's lore accurate. That could be outstanding. And I still wake up at night thinking of that show that we could have had. But this is why we can't have nice things. But it's just, this show has kind of highlighted to me the channels that are just complete and utter shills, and the channels that actually still have some shred of integrity left. Men of the West has gone really high up in my estimations now, and I was always a fan of his channel anyway, but even more so now. Nerd of the Rings, I've unsubscribed from. I don't want any more part of his channel. I don't want to support his channel in any way, because of how much he was shilling for it. And yeah, it's just kind of highlighted to me. It's kind of like evened off the status quo now of the Lord of the Rings, other Lord of the Rings channels, which is a shame, because I do think it has divided the fan base. Before this show, we were all absolutely fine. We all agreed that the Lord of the Rings trilogy was absolutely fantastic, arguably the greatest cinematic trilogy of all time. And The Hobbit, whilst having some good moments, was mostly disappointing. And that's where we were. And now with the Rings of Power, it's just, drawn a line. I still think there's a majority tending towards the fact that, there's a negative criticism. The fact that Amazon are scared of us and actually, calling us out as being ists and phobes and this, and pretty much every episode that went by, it was just like, oh, it's because of the fans. You're the problem, not us for creating a terrible show. You're the problem. The fact that they were doing that episode by episode tells me that our voices weren't going unheard, and that there was a majority in favor of it being a terrible show. So, be thankful for small mercies, I guess. Let's see. Bath Time says, I thought it was pretty good, to be honest. The tempting of Galadriel by Sauron I thought was legitimately amazing. I mean, I can't agree with that, but thank you for sharing your opinions on it. I don't know. I thought it was very ham-fisted how they handled that whole scene. It's just the writing with the brother and the raft stuff. I guess it was kind of cool. I guess you could argue that it was almost like it was Inception, like a dream within a dream, and when she woke up out of it, she didn't know whether she was back in reality or not. And I guess that does show the power of Sauron, that he can really take a hold of the mind and people can never be let go by him. But nonetheless, I thought that the writing was just really bad, to be honest, which we will get onto. The repurposing of dialogue and the fact that they're still trying to ship Halbrand and Galadriel together. Let's see. Lord Oakenshield says, I honestly think the Ralph Bakshi movie from 1978 has been dethroned. Although this animated movie was ridiculous, at least it stays true to the books. I will defend elements of that 1978 movie. I think it was incredibly ambitious for what it was trying to do. The fact that they had to cram so much story into such a short runtime. You can clearly see Peter Jackson being inspired by a lot of the shots from Ralph Bakshi in that 1978 film. I think some of the animation is very nice. It was clearly very ambitious with the rotoscoping in there. I think some of it is genuinely very good. There's some moments that are in there that don't even feature in the Peter Jackson films. And I think it does, it does stay true to elements from the book, although it's heavily truncated. It's just very silly, isn't it? It's just very over the top in some bits. And then for all the good qualities that I have about it, you also get Samwise Gamgee and what they do to him. Fun story about that Ralph Bakshi film, actually. I actually did a collaboration. I actually did a review on that film last year with the Dork Lords, which was, unfortunately, though, it's on my previous channel, and I don't even know if it's still on there now. It could have been deleted when I was labelled an Istonophobe, so that might not still be on there, but it was on my previous channel. I have since reached out to the Dork Lords and see if we're still cool and if he'd like to do a review again with me at some point, and he said he'd be down for it. We just need to find the right thing to talk about. Unfortunately, we can't talk about Ralph Bakshi again because, as I mentioned, we already did it last year. But fun story about that is that I watched that film for the first time right around the time that Two Towers had finished, and I think it probably got a resurgence and it was re-released on video, and I got it on VHS, and I was so desperate to find out what happened in Return of the King that I turned to the animated film, and the film was going on, and we got to Helm's Deep, and we got to the Battle of Helm's Deep, and I thought, oh my god, it's going to go further, and I'm actually going to find out what happens for the next film. Who is she? I didn't know. I hadn't read the book at that point. I didn't know she was Shelob. I didn't know if any of the members of the Fellowship died, so I was clamoring for any information that I could. And the Bakshi film ends at exactly the same part that the Two Towers does. So I never got any information. So I still had to wait a whole other year until Return of the King came out before I could find out what happened. So that's my fun little Ralph Bakshi story. Ecthelion says we could have got a spectacular series, but no, we need professionals, not amateurs. Yeah, we do. We do. Well, the one thing that I'm holding out hope for now is the Warner Brothers movie, the anime, the War of the Rohirrim. When I first heard that they were going to do an anime, I was really against the idea, but actually now I think that animation is the way to go with Middle Earth. Don't get me wrong, it's great seeing it in live action, but I imagine some of the stories in the Silmarillion would be fantastic in animation. Would be literally out of this world in animation, and I'd love to see that. So fingers crossed for War of the Rohirrim, and obviously as we get closer to the time, I'll be covering that a lot more and doing a review on it closer to the time. Bath Time says, I liked the internal logic of it. Sauron's arguments all made sense. Have you seen the Russian Hobbit? I haven't. I did actually last year on my old channel want to do, for the 20th anniversary special of The Lord of the Rings, I wanted to cover all of the previous adaptations of Lord of the Rings. So I wanted to do Russian The Hobbit. I think there's like a weird Swedish or Norwegian version of The Hobbit, which is about 12 minutes long and apparently has very little to do with the Hobbit book. Then, of course, there's the animated Hobbit film. There's the animated Lord of the Rings film. There's the animated Return of the King film. And I wanted to do reviews on all of them. So if you guys are down, I would love to do that. Any chance that I get to talk Middle Earth, I am so down for it. Lord Oakenshield says, the problem I have with the Ralph Bakshi movie is the animation has aged really badly, but it's probably one of the most faithful adaptations of the book. Yeah, it's very faithful, considering the runtime and what they have to work with. There's elements of the animation that I do enjoy still, and I do appreciate, but it's very awkward, the combination of the rotoscoping and the actual animation. I watched it as a child, and the stabbing of the pillows by the Nazgul is probably the most scared I've been from a cartoon, with the exception of the start of Watership Down. Oh, God, yeah. That could be a separate list video of old childhood things that have traumatized me, whether it be animation or, family films from back in the day. There's a lot of scary shit. Ecthelion says, I think the elves would look great in animation. Yeah. I mean, I'm picturing things like Ungoliant fighting Morgoth would look amazing. You'd have the duel with Morgoth, and Morgoth came with his Warhammer Grond. That would look great in animation. Oh god, Eärendil with Ancalagon the Black would be outstanding. I can imagine. The image I have in my head is just this beautiful long shot, this wide shot of this small little bright light from Vingalot, and this giant, immense, black, dark dragon, and this thing just hurtling towards. I think there's a picture actually on Google that I'm thinking of. That would look outstanding in animation. I am going to move on with the episode real quick, but I will get to all of you guys' comments, so please keep them coming in. I just realized that it's 20 to 12 and we're still at the beginning of this episode. So let's go through it a little bit more. So Galadriel meets up with Elrond, and they have a good catch up, have a good chin wag. Galadriel says that she leapt from the ship because she believed she was not worthy of it being Valinor. Well, that's not quite why she leapt off, was it? She leapt off because she was hell-bent on vengeance and wanting to find Sauron and wanting to kill Sauron. That was what I inferred was the reason that she jumped off the ship. Which then she clarifies afterwards. So initially she says that she leapt from the ship because she believed she was not worthy of going back to Valinor. I mean, if we follow the law, she probably felt a great deal of shame from that as well, because, she was one of the Noldor. She left. She left Valinor, which was a big no-no, but she left because she wanted her own kingdom. So probably going back there, she would be filled with regret and shame, maybe, as to how things went down. And then she said, when I surfaced, all I could do was swim and pray I had chosen wisely. Well, yeah, when you jump off a ship in the middle of the Sundering Seas, in the middle of a goddamn ocean, I think swimming probably is your only bet. You either tread water or you swim. There is, pray that she had chosen wisely. There is no way. I don't know what that decision is. That is a terrible decision. That wasn't being fueled by revenge or feeling not worthy. That was basically suicide, what she did. And she was just so lucky that conveniently in the writing, she happened to bump into a raft at that one part of the Sundering Sea. There happened to be a bunch of survivors to rescue Galadriel. You see how this writing is terrible? Yeah, what other decision did she have? She jumped into the middle of the ocean. She says, all I had to do, the only decision I had was to swim. Well, she would have died because, well, probably not in the show because, Galadriel's amazing at everything. She probably would have made it to the shores of Middle-earth just fine. And she probably would have done it in half an episode runtime as well, because we know what a span of time is in this show. People can just teleport anywhere. And And then they have more of a conversation. I think they probably get talking about Sauron. Oh no, I think they're talking about the fact that the elves are dying. Their light is fading, and they all need to go to the west. And Elrond says, "What can we do?" And because this series is so poetic, Galadriel says, "The only thing we can do, swim." It's just like, it's this show. Oh god, the writing's so bad. It's so bad. I can't get over it. I get what she's trying to say. I get the metaphor, but we know what this show's like with metaphors. Galadriel, do you know why a ship sails and a stone sinks? Oh, we get a follow up to that scene as well later on with her brother. Let's see. Taralinian says he claimed that in every variant history of Galadriel and Celeborn, they often had very long separations, plural, multiple separations. I don't think Tolkien wrote, though, that he was imprisoned, and only mentions her husband 7 episodes in to an 8-episode season. The fact is, they had one separation of up to about 400 years length, depending on variant, and in one variant, they did not have any. Also, remember, according to Thranduil, 100 years is a mere blink in the life of an elf. So 400 years is probably just like a weekend away for an elf, I'm guessing. Bath Time says Arundel on his ship would be insane. Yeah, let me know some other scenes you'd love to see in animation from the Silmarillion as well, or even like the Unfinished Tales or something like that. I'm trying to think of some other scenes from the Silmarillion that would be amazing. Oh, Glaurung. Are you kidding me? Like the whole Glaurung story. Beren and Luthien with the wolf chasing after them and entering Morgoth's chambers, and it's very quiet, and she sings for him and lulls everyone to sleep. The whole werewolf and vampire stuff, and Huon fighting the Lord of the Werewolves. That would be amazing. I just want to see all these stories. I just want to see all of them. And I think with animation, you could get incredibly visual and imaginative with how you deal with the Ainulindale. Is it Ainulindale? Ainu Indalie? I've heard people just pronounce that in 2 different ways. But the whole War of the Music and stuff, if you think back to what Disney did with Fantasia initially, and I think there's a segment towards the beginning of Fantasia, which is kind of like musical notes and motifs that flow in with the music, and I think you could do something very similar. We'll never get this, but it's nice to think about. Time says she's the aquatic Forrest Gump in it. Just swim, Galadriel. Yeah, just keep swimming, Galadriel. Bath Time says the Discord of Melkor would probably be done best as an animation. Yeah, I agree. Ecthelion. Gondolin. I'm biased. Yeah, that would be awesome. I'd just all the stories. It seems such a cop-out to just say all of them, but genuinely, the Silmarillion needs to be made into an animation. I think that's the only way that you can do it justice. Okay. Halbrand is alive and kicking, and he's absolutely fine. We never even see him get healed, as far as I know. I think he gets healed off screen, if I remember rightly. Halbrand comes sauntering out, and the guy loves his smithing. He loves his smithing, and he loves asking questions about it. Oh, but no, Gandalf is Sauron, because the 3 ladies called him Sauron, so he is clearly Sauron. Halbrand's just a dude. It's right around this time that we see the 3 stones from the Elven Rings, and I'd probably have to watch it again, but I'm going to take your guys' word for it because you've sounded off in the comments. The stones are incredibly big. But at least they got the colors right. I'll say that about it. We got silver, we got blue, we got red. So they didn't fuck that up. Clearly they've read the lore enough to know what colors the rings need to be. Halbrand says, Ecthelion says Halbrand is fine because he's Sauron. Oh, I know that. But they don't know that. He's just a mortal man, you know? And actually, that's a question, because Gandalf died, his body was broken, and he succumbed to his injuries. But then again, granted, he was fighting a Balrog of Morgoth, so he was fighting an entity on the same power level as he. But if Gandalf got stabbed, like, he can still be mortally wounded, right? Like, I know he's this immortal spirit and would probably get reincarnated down the line, but he doesn't possess the power to self-heal and to regenerate, as far as I know. So, as far as I know, he's kind of like the elves. He is immortal if you just leave him alone. But if you cut Gandalf's head off, like, he will die. If you stab him, the wound will probably still go bad. Probably not as quickly as it would to a mortal, but I have to imagine that we still have to abide by those rules. Bath Time says, "Don't elves see Maiar in their unseen form?" That's a fantastic question, and maybe Ecthelion or Tarelenian would probably be the best people to ask that question to. I believe they do. I think so. Certainly, probably like the high elves, who are probably more in tune with things, would, I imagine. There's a line that Halbrand says where he says, "Call it a gift." I can't remember what he specifically says that about. I don't know if it's the gift of information to Celeborn, but he basically tells it, Celeborn. I think Halbrand mentions to Celeborn that they need to alloy the mithril with something, because Celebrimbor's trying to just do it with mithril, and it's not working, and it's being an absolute pain in the ass, and it's kind of resisting his smithing abilities. So Halbrand gives him some advice, and he says maybe we should try smithing it with something, because it could amplify the qualities that it has. And I just love the fact that Halbrand is giving Celebrimbo smithing advice. And Celebrimbor's like, "Oh yes, alloying, I never thought of that." And I'm like, come on. You're the grandson of Feanor, who is the greatest smith alive, probably next to Aule, and you didn't even think of possibly alloying this thing. I don't know. To me, this just completely emasculates Celebrimbor and just makes him an absolute idiot. Look how they massacred my boy Celebrimbor. Tarelenian says, "Correct regarding Gandalf, and there stood Gandalf with his arm in a sling. Even the wizard had not escaped without a wound, and there were few unharmed and all that." Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, I remember that now. It's from the end of the Battle of the Five Armies, isn't it? Okay, then we cut to Numenor. We've got Ar-Pharazôn, who enlists a bunch of artists to recapture the king's likeness to prepare him a tomb, because they know that the king's on his deathbed. It's only a matter of time, and he wants to make the necessary preparations. Isildur's sister. Oh, yeah. I keep forgetting that Isildur had a sister. Well, I hope any women watching feel seen with this show now, because she was injected into the show to increase the female. I don't know. I don't know, what do you call it? Just the female empowerment. Just just that dash of feminine into the legendarium. And what has a character achieved? What has Isildur's sister? I can't even tell you what she's called. I can't even remember a goddamn name. She mentioned that she's got accepted into the Architects Guild, and she gets shown the Palantir in 8 episodes. That's all her character does. And this episode doesn't even have any payoff to that. We don't even get any payoff to the whole Palantir scene. The king mistakes Isildur's sister for his own daughter, Miriel. Again, I don't quite get how Miriel's his daughter. The gene pool does not run strong in Numenor, apparently. And he warns her of the impending doom of Numenor. She then gets led into this side room, and she finds the Palantir, and that's it. We don't know what she saw in it. We assume that she saw the downfall of Numenor, and that's it. Bath Time says, and that bit where the king turned into a ninja and fucked off in 1 second was incredibly lame. Yeah, dude, maybe that's shape-shifting Slim Lady as well. Maybe she possessed the king at that point. Maybe he can teleport as well. Ecthelion says, elves who lived in Valinor live in both the seen and unseen realms and have great power. Of Glorfindel to Frodo, it appeared that a white light was shining through the form and raiment of the rider, and that's from the Lord of the Rings. Yeah, I imagine they would. Maybe not all elves have that ability. But yeah, as you mentioned, elves who lived in Valinor would have that ability. So yeah. But they're writing the novel that Tolkien never did. And just because Tolkien never wrote that Galadriel met up with Sauron at some point back in the day or traveled to Numenor, that's given them the scapegoat to be able to write it. But yeah. See, unlike the showrunners, you guys actually know your Tolkien. You know your lore. You've read it. You are learned in the ways of Tolkien. If only they could get people like you guys on the writing team, and imagine the content that we'd have. Celebrimbor urges Gil-galad for him to make a crown using the mithril, which is a ridiculous suggestion. So he uses the line power over flesh, which I believe was a line that Adar used and Sauron probably used as well. And Gil-galad refuses initially. So I guess the plan at this point is to create a mithril crown. I don't know how they could make a crown out of that small bit of mithril. It would probably have to be like the thinnest band of a crown, but you wouldn't be able to make it ornate, I'm guessing, with the amount of mithril that you've got. But I don't know anything about smithing, so maybe you could. And I guess all the power of it would go to Gil-galad, and by proxy of him being the High King of the Elves, that power of light and rejuvenation in the Elven Kingdom would kind of dissipate into all of the elves walking on Middle-earth. But what about the ones in kingdoms ages away? Because we clearly only saw that the mithril worked when it's in close proximity to the thing that it's trying to rejuvenate. So Gil-galad would feel great. But I imagine the tree, unless he stood next to the tree wouldn't be affected, and the tree would still be dying, and all of the other elves would still be dying. So that's very strange that he suggested a crown. And if it is the case that because he's the High King, that power would filter to everyone, that just doesn't make any sense to me. We come back to Halbrand again with his smithing. Halbrand loves his smithing. Really loves his smithing. Asking lots of questions and smithing. He then tells Galadriel that he will not forget what she did for him. Remember this for later, because they still do try and ship the two of those together. Because Sauron's looking for a wife. It looks like he's trying to wife up Galadriel. So then we cut back to Slim Lady and her cronies, I don't know what you call them, the M&M ladies. And she's referring to the stars, and she calls it the Hermit's Hat. And she says that far to the east in the deserts of Rhûn, that's where Gandalf will get all of his answers. Sauron's followers say that they will bind Gandalf until he controls his powers, because they're pretty scared of his powers, and he's kind of showcasing a lot of them. They're a bad influence on him, really, because they say, like, oh, you're Lord Sauron, and you are the bringer of destruction, and you are the destroyer of worlds. And he's like, yes. And he's going like, he's like Jafar at the end of Aladdin. He's like, the absolute power. And all the leaves are swirling around, and the trees are going crazy. And then Slim Lady goes like, oh, shit, this is actually kind of scary. Okay, we need to knock this guy out. We need to... She's like pouring chloroform into a handkerchief. She's like, we need to take this guy out. Until he can control his shit. Let's take him to the deserts of Rhûn, where there's only sand. There's nothing that he can throw at us. Right around this point, it's revealed that the Harfoots are hiding and watching all of this go down. How did the Harfoots catch up with them so quickly? They knew where he was heading, but again, Gandalf had about a day or more, head start on them. They're also very little, and clearly their footsteps, their strides would be a lot smaller than a fully grown man, especially an Astari who is way taller than the regular mortal man. But they're there, they've caught up, they're already in Greenwood and have found exactly where he is and are spying on what's going down. I don't know how they managed to catch up with him that quickly, but I'm a broken record at this point across all of the weeks, saying that how do people get to places in the span of time that they do? It's because the showrunners just need it to happen. They need it to happen for the plot. It says Halbrand wants a promotion. Yeah, he does. He really does. this is relating to the elves seeing things in their Maiar and other such things in their true form. Also, non-Valinorian elves. The dead are following, said Legolas. I see shapes of men and of horses, and pale banners like shreds of cloud, and spears like winter thickets on a misty night. The dead are following. Yeah. Okay, so I don't know if all of you guys will get this reference, but I just made a note here, and it really reminded. So one of my favorite comedy series of all time. It's a British BBC comedy series from the 80s into the 90s called Bottom, with Rick Mayall and Aid Edmondson. And there's a moment in this episode where one of the Half-Foots is making owl noises, and it just reminded me of a quote from Bottom. It's like, "Whoo, whoo, Eddie, there's someone outside making owl impressions. Not very good ones either." It just reminded me of that. So if you guys have seen Bottom, you can take appreciation of that. If you haven't, you have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about. And then the hobbits attack. They try and distract Slim Lady. I don't know what they were trying to do. I don't know how they could possibly fight. I will say, round about this point, Slim Lady got some good legs. She got some good thighs, some good legs on show. Just saying, just credit where credit's due. She looks like she works out. It's right around this point that Lenny Henry just kind of like jumps out and just immediately gets throwing knifed by one of the ladies, which was it's hilarious. Just takes this goddamn throwing knife. Shape-shifting Slim Lady disguises herself as Gandalf to trick the Half-Foots. Oh god, then the wizard battle happens. We have a wizard battle. And this scene is kind of a cross between the You Shall Not Pass scene and oh god, what other scene? Oh god, I knew the two scenes in my head that it reminded me of. You Shall Not Pass. Oh yeah, it's the Saruman and Gandalf fight from Fellowship of the Ring, and it's that mixed with You Shall Not Pass. And he does this spell, and it's got like a moth motif, which I'm guessing is. It looks like something from Harry Potter in this scene. It looks like a goddamn Patronus. And it's this giant moth that unfurls itself made of light. And clearly they did that because, again, callbacks to Lord of the Rings, when Gandalf catches the moth and he's like, and he sends it off to get the eagles. Yep, there you go. Gandalf was spinning. Slim Lady's like, I gave you the chance of aiding me willingly, but you have elected the way of pain. And he's there with his staff, and the line, it's so bad as well. It's so shit. He's like, instead of like, you shall not pass, he's like, I am good, which is an actual line in this show. Can we talk about how fluent in common speech now that Gandalf is? Dude was just talking like Groot in the first couple of episodes, and now he's forming massive, complex, full sentences, and he's absolutely fine. Right before this Slim Lady is about to lay the smack down on Gandalf, and gets distracted where the Half-Foot start throwing rocks at her, which was quite funny. Yeah, anyway, so they recreate that scene, and he casts them out, and they turn into skeletons right before, and I'm guessing they were intentionally made to look like the ring wraiths in their actual true form. You know, when Frodo slips on the ring at Weathertop, and then they're all in, when he gets stabbed. They kind of look like that. They look like a combination of that mixed with the Army of the Dead. So I don't know whether they're wraiths or whatever they are, or they're just undead. Something out of the Barrow Wights or something, how they looked. Or maybe he just destroyed them so hard that they turned into a kind of like how in Home Alone 2, where Marv touches that electrocuted cooker and he turns into a skeleton, maybe. I don't know. Ecthelion says, yeah, I think they're supposed to be female Nazgul. That's coming in season 2 or 3. I know for a fact we're going to get female Nazgul. I would almost bet money on it at this point. Tara Lenian says, I really disliked that Gandalf Saruman scene in Lord of the Rings by Jackson. I've seen a lot of people really shitting on that scene, and honestly, I'm fine with it. I don't know what the problem is, because the magic in the Lord of the Rings films, and even kind of in the book, it's very low key. So I wouldn't want to see them sending out like fire spells and water bending. You know, I wouldn't want to see a wizard fight like Voldemort versus Dumbledore at the end of Order of the Phoenix. I don't mind it. I really don't mind it. I think it's quite cool. The music's great in that scene as well. I like how they're just getting all beat up and blooded. When you've got old men that are just kind of like slamming into marble floors, and you're like, oh shit, you know, probably broken bones and everything. I don't know. I've always loved that scene. It's right around this time as well where Lenny Henry is succumbing to his wounds. The half foot that dies first is the half foot of color, which is quite funny. Oh, the brother always gets it first, right? And he says, I'd quite like to watch the sun come up. And I'm watching this scene thinking, if I actually cared about these characters, if this show had stayed true to the lore and it had good writing, a scene like this where we're saying goodbye to a character, and, you know, as a Hobbit is saying, oh, I'd quite like to watch the sun come up, that's quite, you know, thematically, that's in keeping with something that I could imagine Tolkien doing, and it's something I could imagine a Hobbit doing, who are very one with nature and wanting to see the sun come up again. But I just don't care about Lenny Henry's Sarduk or any of the Half-Foots in this. Like, they shouldn't even be here. They shouldn't be here. But I'm watching these actors try. Some of these actors are really trying. When you get some of the goodbye scenes later on, the writing isn't good, but the actors are trying to make it work, and I just can't help but feel, you know, if this was a better show and we actually gave a shit about these characters. There are no characters in this show. There are just archetypes. There are just subversion of expectations and desecration of Tolkien's works. There are no actual character scenes in this, really. And if there are character scenes, they get contradicted. Galadriel's character has been contradicted almost every single episode. It's just really frustrating. And yeah, you know, you've got actors in there as well. The guy who plays Elendil is trying. He's really trying. The guy who plays Adar, fantastic actor, and the material they have to work with is shit, but they're trying. And you just think, if you got this talent on board, if you got these actors on board with really good quality stuff, who knows what we could have got. But yeah, just more missed opportunity after missed opportunity. Let's see. I made a note at this point. So it was right after Sarduk died. And I put, I'm 30 minutes into this episode, and this episode feels never ending. I don't know if it was because we just had like a big climactic fight, and maybe narratively I thought, okay, this is ramping up to the end now. This is it. We're done. And then I checked that runtime and I had another 45 minutes to go. And I just wanted to cry because it felt agonizingly slow. Just 30 minutes in. Then we cut back to the ship heading back towards Numenor. And we have a scene of Elendil talking to Miriel. Now, I initially read this scene completely wrong because I thought Elendil was coming on to Miriel. They're talking about the stars or something, and she's saying like, why did you come with me, or something like that. And Elendil says, I do not only love the stars. And then she kind of walks up to him and leans on him, and I thought, is he saying that he loves Miriel? Is like, are we setting up something between these two? And then I think that I just read that scene completely wrong, but I swear to God that's how I initially read that scene, that he was basically professing his love for Miriel and his devotion to her. And I don't think it was devotion as in like a kind of Queensguard kind of way. I genuinely believed it as like a romantic interest. Yeah, Miriel certainly isn't hiding the fact that she's blind now, is she? Remember initially when she was like, how long have we been out of this fog? And he says, oh, we've been out of it about a mile. And she says, like, lead my horse, don't let anyone know. But yet at the end of that episode, she's wearing a blindfold. She just straight up walks onto the top of the ship in this one. Sorry, let me get a drink. Ugh. I'm getting over the flu, guys, so just give me a second. Yeah, and I thought they were going to try and spin something where she was going to still try and keep up the facade that she wasn't blind. When she was trying to count how many steps it was up to deck, I thought she was going to try, take her blindfold off and she was going to just try and walk and count the steps. And when they get to Numenor and everyone's like, oh, look at our beloved homeland, and if she's just looking completely in the wrong direction on the ship or something, I thought she was going to try and fake it. But then she just walks out with a blindfold on anyway, so clearly everyone knows. Thelian says, Miriel is blinded by this terrible series. Yeah, she is. They arrive back to Numenor, and the whole city and all of the ships are displaying black banners because of the death of the king. Let me go back to some of your guys' comments. Tara Lillian says the wizard fight should have been one of words, with Saruman exerting his dominance, with Gandalf succumbing to his power. Probably too subtle for film, though. That's what you get with a lot with Peter Jackson with The Lord of the Rings, is that with the book there's a lot more nuance and subtlety which you can get away with on the page, and just is more in keeping with Tolkien's works. With a film, you've got certain moments and like lulls in the action, and you have to then have an action scene that ramps up the tension. It's got to be more visual. I honestly don't mind it. We could have had the scene from the animated film where he's like, Saruman of many colors. At least he's called Saruman and not Araman, because that really pisses me off with the animated one. Taralanian says, this is the first episode I actually dozed off in right about the rings reveal. Says it all, doesn't it? It's such a slow series. Nothing in 8 episodes. It feels like barely anything has happened, or even the stuff that has happened. It just feels of little consequence, really. Lord Oakenshield says the only character I actually liked was Durin the Fourth. The scenes with the characters were the only scenes I enjoyed a little bit. And here's the thing: they still weren't written well. And it still completely fucks with the lore, but it looked like that actor was trying. And yeah, if I am going to pick a favorite character, it's probably right in line with either Adar, because I found him interesting, played by a really good actor, and Durin the Fourth. Okay, let's continue. We cut back to Celebrimbor, who is struggling to alloy the mithril. Oh, God, here we go. This is the Sauron reveal now. Galadriel wants to know who Halbrand really is, and she says, I did some digging, and there is no king of the Southlands. The line was broken, and once again, setting Halbrand up to be this Aragorn figure to do a subversion of expectations on the classic heroic male, the one heroic male character in this entire show, and we have to do a subversion of it and tear it down, and it turns out that he's not a hero after all. He is the main villain of the show. We don't really have any heroic guy characters in the entire series, but we have plenty of heroic women, don't we? And people tell me that they're not trying to put a political agenda on this thing. Once again, repurposing lines for Aragorn. The line was broken. That's a line that's delivered by the King of the Dead in Return of the King to Aragorn directly. The line was broken. It has been remade. Oh, I really want to watch Lord of the Rings now. December, guys, we're watching it December, okay? It's going to happen. Oh, God, I've lost my place. Hang on, let me get back there. Where am I? Here we go. What I want to know is, Halbrand comes in, right? She brings Halbrand back to Eregion. And she says, like, this guy is dying. He needs elvish medicine. At some point, Elrond, Gil-galad, Celebrimbor probably went, who's this guy? And she was like, oh, his name is Halbrand. He is king of the Southlanders. He is destined to reclaim the throne of the long lost line, or something like that. Now, maybe this is me barking up the wrong tree, but Elrond and certainly Gil-galad are incredibly learned in ancient history, in Middle-earthen history of many different cultures and many different races. Surely they would know the lineage of kings and would know the information that Galadriel later finds out about now, that there are no kings of the Southlands. You would think that when Halbrand first mentioned that to Galadriel, she would chase this up. She would do some research into it. The fact that Galadriel could look at a marking in the first episode and not know what it is, and then all of a sudden, a few episodes later down the line when she goes to Numenor, see exactly the same marking and just immediately know that it's a map to the Southlands and to Mordor, or what would eventually become Mordor. She knows her shit, or she should know her shit, and she knows her shit about the Southlands. And I don't know, I just think that these high elves, especially the High King of the Noldor, would know ancient histories, and they would know that Halbrand was chatting shit when he said that he was king of the Southlanders. Yeah, and it's just, she just acts completely dumbfounded, and she just pulls this scroll out of her ass that apparently has been lying around in Eregion all of this time. So if it's been in Eregion, then it implies that Elrond has read it, because he reads all the scrolls and all the parchment, that Gil-galad would have read it at some point, that someone there may have penned that scroll, but no one knows this information apart from Galadriel when she goes to find it. And we get our official reveal. Halbrand is Sauron. What a twist! All roads have been leading to this moment, and the writers think it's a really compelling twist, and it's a really big shocker. And it really isn't, because we knew it right from the off. All of the leaks were true. Taralenian says, I saw the Bakshi film in the theatre when it came out. I was 11 or 12. I would love, genuinely, I would love to see it on the big screen, just to see what it's like. Bath Time with Vaughan says, I wonder what the most interesting thing that was left out to Elrond and Gil-galad was: the eruption of Mount Doom, Galadriel not going to Valinor, the mark of Sauron being a map or wall trick. Have you heard of Sauron? Well, Elrond knew that Galadriel didn't go to Valinor. I think, doesn't Gil-galad know as well? Because he says a line to Galadriel like, you shouldn't be here. And I was like, you got a point, dude. Yeah, you're right. I can't even be mad at you. But at least we actually get an episode in this where, well, I mean, she does ride back, but after that, she's not in armor. And she does, I guess, act more in line with what an elf maiden would be like, an elven ruler, and not like a Joan of Arc character. At the time, it was fun. My friend and I ran all the way home pretending we were fighting orcs. That's great. You live for that shit, though, don't you? You always do that stuff when you're a kid, or even an adult. Some people make a living off doing that stuff. LARPing, reenactments. You know? Oh yeah, we'll get to the animated one as well. Why not? And this is where we get our Inception vision, where we delve into the mind of Galadriel, and she is with her brother. Still no word on the other two brothers, I'm afraid. It's just the one from episode 1. And he's like, Sauron is trying to bring peace. He's trying to unite everyone under one banner. We must join with him, Galadriel. We must join with Sauron. He's trying to tempt her, basically. We then cut to this. So again, you know, she's hung up on her brother being dead and wanting revenge on that. We then cut to the scene. We go to like the next layer of the dream level, and she's on the raft again with Halbrand. And this is the part that really got me. So he's coming on to her and he's saying, like, you know, you can rule by my side. Galadriel, you shall be my queen. And then they quote it. They quote the line, and it was teed up, and I knew they were going to do it because they couldn't fucking resist. stronger than the foundations of the earth. They're basically quoting the, in place of a dark lord, you will have a queen, not dark, but beautiful and terrible as the dawn, treacherous as the sea, stronger than the foundations of the earth. They just do that. They just do that shit. Now, in that moment, okay, if this is like a deep dive into Galadriel's mind and all the reasons that she hates Sauron and hates what he's trying to do and hate what he's done, in the first bit, she's got a brother, and she's really hung upon the death of her brother at the armies of Sauron. When he's then trying to tempt her, and they're still trying to ship the two of these together, and it feels genuine. It feels genuine when Sauron says that he wants her to rule by his side as queen. Like, he has an admiration for her. He said earlier that I will never forget what you did for me and helping me here. Everything you have done, Galadriel, is to lead me to exactly where I need to be. Why in that moment doesn't she mention Celeborn? Now that Celeborn has been name dropped in the previous episode, and we know that her husband has been killed or captured by orcs, we don't know. Well, we know for the sake of everything that needs to happen, he's going to still be alive and he's going to be out there somewhere. But in this moment, the character, why wouldn't she mention Celeborn? When he's saying like, oh, rule by my side as my wife, as my queen, she'd be like, I have a husband, Celeborn. You killed him. You imprisoned him. You tortured him. Why wouldn't she fire back with that? Sauron doesn't have an argument to stand on here. But again, it seems like the show writers and Galadriel just forgot that she's married. Technically, legally, she is still married. Until she confirms that death, there is no death do you part. To the point where almost that Celeborn scene from a couple of episodes ago, or last episode, whenever it was, that almost feels like a reshoot. Like, people were probably complaining, or the writers went, oh yeah, shit, we forgot about Celeborn, we need to bring him in. Just get like a quick couple of lines in there where we talk about him. Because then the next episode, there is no mention of him. It's really weird that he's not mentioned. There's a line again where a repurposed dialogue where Sauron says, together we can save this Middle Earth. And then Galadriel says, or rule it. And he goes, well, they're basically exactly the same thing. And she says, and that is why I will never join you. Repurposing the dialogue, together, my Lord Sauron, we shall rule this Middle Earth. Saruman from the Two Towers. Bath Time says, I genuinely thought these temptation scenes were by far the best in the series so far. I like the concept of like the dream within the dream, but it just comes to it's just the writing, it's just the repurposed dialogue from they are lesser lines from greater sires, to paraphrase a Lord of the Rings line. The writing is shit, the characterization is shit, but yeah, I guess if you're talking about it from like a filmmaking concept, I like the idea of it being like a dream within a dream where you can't tell what is real. Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? When she snaps out of it and she tries to kill Elrond briefly because she thinks she's still in that dream level, that's a cool concept. I like that, but it's just, it needs to be backed up by good characterization and good writing and good acting, and I don't feel like it had any of those. When both of them are screaming in each other's face, it was downright laughable to me, in all honesty. It really was. Ecthelion says, I was hoping Finrod's name would not be mentioned. Yeah. Giving Galadriel's line to Sauron. Sad. Poor Celeborn. And Celebrian. Yeah, we still have no word on Celebrian, and that's going to be really weird now, because Elrond's going to be making the moves on a toddler. That's just going to be really weird. Tara Lenian says, and unless she does have Celebrian and she hasn't mentioned a daughter, like we're going to get to what? Maybe this can be the running theme of all of these seasons. And in episode 7 of season 2, she's going to be like, I had a daughter. Her name was Celebrian. I chided her because her dress didn't fit her. At episode 7 of every season, she's going to recall a past family member that she hasn't mentioned before. And then in episode 7 of season 3, she's going to be like, oh, also, I had 2 other brothers, but I never mentioned them. Taranian says, and unless an elf refuses to be re-embodied, they remain married. So not until death do you part, per laws and customs. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Bath Time with Vaughn says, that's the line I loved about them being the same thing, because it confirms it's a deception by Sauron despite making decent arguments. Was he making decent arguments? I mean, I've never actually considered Sauron's motives all that much, because Sauron in the books just kind of, he serves a narrative function of being this, faceless, just evil character. It's very black and white when it comes to Lord of the Rings. Yes, you have some moral grey characters in the middle with the likes of Denethor and Gollum especially. But inherently, Sauron serves a narrative function of just being this all-encompassing evil, and you're not really meant to think about it all that much. Granted, with the Silmarillion, you get more of a backstory with him and why he's doing what he's doing to a point, but not completely in depth. One ring to rule them all, and in the darkness bind them. It just seems like he wants to bring everyone in under his shadow. Whether that is a way to organize everything and to control everything in the prospect of peace, that remains to be seen. But I mean, they go into that, but it's just all the things that Galadriel could have fired back with and just didn't. And the whole thing, rule by my side, love me, be my slave, and all of that shit. So Elrond awakens Galadriel from her visions. There's a line here which is really gross, and because I have such a sick mind, my mind went exactly to one place, and maybe I might try and use this line in my everyday. Galadriel, you're as wet as a river rock. I'm just going to leave that one there. Hell, I didn't write that line. Darling, it's better down where it's wetter, take it from me. Right around this point, Halbrand has fled. I don't know how he can just magically disappear like that. Does he just run? Because later we see him in Halbrand form again, which implies that he stays as human form and doesn't shapeshift into something that can fly away or disappear really quickly and make a quick getaway. He's just fled. So does he have a proximity thing here where he can control someone's mind? He hasn't created the One Ring yet, so I'm guessing at this point he's still at full strength. So he might be able to just control people's minds from afar. And if that's the case, why can't he just control Gil-galad or Elrond or Celebrimbor and still achieve all the things that he wants to achieve? So again, I have to believe that Sauron has a limit. In the Lord of the Rings, he can control people's minds through the ring, and because his power is increasing, the shadow is just naturally felt throughout the land. But in terms of directly controlling someone's mind, I don't think Sauron has that power. He tends to break people's minds through, around about this time anyway, through torture and direct manipulation in person. So if he's controlling Galadriel's mind, then he has to be present for that, and he wasn't present for that. But then when Elrond wakes her up out of the spell, Halbrand's nowhere to be seen. And the next time we see him, motherfucker's walked back to the Southlands, where Mordor is now, and is approaching Mount Doom. So I don't get how he managed to get away so quickly. Or maybe he was just hiding behind a tree. It's like the Scary Movie. It's like, now do you know where I am? You don't? Yeah, you're behind the couch. I can see your feet. Ah, shit. Like, maybe it was like that. Maybe he was just hiding behind a tree. Lord Oakenshield says, the moment when Galadriel and Sauron Halbrand are on the raft in that last episode has one of the most cringe dialogue I've ever heard. When they scream to each other, I died laughing. Yeah, that was almost, that scream face of Halbrand, or the scream face of Galadriel, was almost going to be the background image of this live stream. But the one I went with, like, genuinely, I don't like the connotation of it or the delivery of it, but that's a really cool fucking shot. I'll give them that. That's a cool shot. That's a nice background, so I went with that one. But yeah, next time I might go for more meme faces and go. Season 2, I might just do like all awkward faces from Galadriel or screaming faces. Bath Time says, I think they were decent. She had her words repeated to her by her brother, main motivation to forgive him. She's seen the effects of Morgoth on Arda. Sauron's free of Morgoth now. I did quite like the idea, though, where Sauron was saying that when Morgoth died, I had a brief moment where I considered repenting for my sins, and, you know, turning back to the One now that I'm not kind of under the thumb of Morgoth. I thought that's actually quite a cool thing. I've never considered that. But as far as I know from the lore, when Morgoth died, Sauron just kind of fled and went into hiding for a while to bolster his armies, I think. I need to read the Silmarillion again, but I'm pretty sure. I think he did flee to Mordor, didn't he, after that? Or did he flee to sorry. I'm guessing he fled into the East, didn't he, and started corrupting the men of the East, I think, and just kind of bolstering his forces in Mordor, if I remember correctly. Yeah, Ecthelion says he cannot directly control their minds. Bath Time says, I'm very confused by the ending, as it felt to me he was Galadriel in disguise, and then he turns up like a sexy Sith in Mordor. Yeah, he's rocking this, like, it looked like he was wearing a hoodie, actually, which is kind of funny. Yeah, I guess, like, you know, like a Sith thing. It's like, every single Jedi, including your friend, Obi-Wan Kenobi, is now an enemy of the Republic. Yeah. Actually, he's probably not too dissimilar to Palpatine when he's, you know. It's like, we shall have peace. Celebrimbor apparently needs some Valinorian gold and silver to alloy with the mithril. So they melt down Galadriel's dagger, which I'm guessing is supposed to be symbolic of her giving up her quest for vengeance and revenge and everything like that. But then she's going to have a line that, oh, the dagger is still with me at all times with this ring, or something like that. Gandalf is apparently going to Rune at the end. He's about to set out, and female Frodo's going to go with him. I also make another note here saying, how is Gandalf able to talk so much? The fact that they're going to Rune, I think for season 2, we're definitely going to get the Blue Wizards. I think he's going to meet up with the other Astari. It's interesting that they still don't call him Gandalf and they still don't call him Alorin. So they do call him Istar. So I wonder if they don't have the rights to Alorin or to Gandalf, the name. So that's interesting. So I think we're going to get Blue Wizards, and of course, going to Rune, I think we are going to see the factions of the bad guys. But, you know, we can't make Asian people all bad guys. You know, we can't have them all be bad, even though they're corrupted. So I think you're going to have probably like a wayward. They're going to meet up with a nice runic person, runic person from Rune. Who are just misunderstood and trying to get away from the evils of their kingdom. I think that's probably what you're going to have. Yeah, female Frodo is going with him. And I said, why? What is she going to accomplish? What can she bring? Like, clearly they just want to keep that character in the fold. They want to develop that relationship between Gandalf and her, I suppose. But narratively, why does she need to go with Gandalf? Gandalf can just go, to quote a Fleetwood Mac song, he can go his own way. I don't know why she's got to still go with him. And again, as I mentioned, these farewells, these emotional crying goodbyes between these characters in a better written show where I actually give a fuck about these characters could be impactful. I feel like they were acted very well, and the actors were really trying with the material they had. But when the material they have is just absolutely terrible, then there's only so much they can do with it. I just feel nothing. You have female Sam, who I thought at one point, I thought they were going to do it. I thought they were going to do the... I can't even remember what she's called, so I'm going to call her Sam for the sake of this. Like, go back, Sam. I'm going to Rune alone. Of course you are. And I'm coming with you. I thought they were going to do that whole thing. I thought they were going to breaking of the Fellowship us at the end. Or like a Merry and Pippin at the Council of Elrond, like, or Sam actually, here, Nori's not going anywhere without me. No, indeed it hardly, what is it? No, indeed it is impossible to separate you, even when he is summoned to a secret council and you are not. Here, we're coming too. You have to tie us up in a sack to stop us. I thought they were going to do that whole thing. And I thought you were going to have female Sam, female Frodo, and Gandalf all going off together on a merry adventure to Rune. And I still think that female Sam will follow into season 2. I think she'll catch up with them or come with her. Because she'll be the comic relief, it'll be the trio. You've got the wise old sage, you've got the blue-eyed, plucky protagonist in Nori, and then you've got the comic larger sidekick, and that's what you're going to have. And then more repurposed dialogue, and again, I knew they were doing it, because Gandalf says he smells something, he goes like, the air is sweet on the nose or something. I thought, here we go, they're going to do it. So initially when he said about smelling the wind or something, and it's like, it's this way, I smell the wind, I started to write down repurposed dialogue, when in doubt, Master Meriadoc, always follow your nose. But then as I was writing that line, the actual line verbatim was delivered in the show. And you get that moment, and he says, when in doubt, Nori, always follow your nose. I can't believe it. I can't believe the fucking gall on this show. I really can't. Oh, God. Hang on. Let me just go back to some of you guys' comments. Ecthelian says, Halbrand was wearing a hoodie at the end with his ridiculous red eyes. I burst out laughing in that scene. Yeah, was wearing a hoodie. Yeah, I could have swore he was. Celebrimbor needs some anti-aging potion. That might be the biggest miscast in the whole show. I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to say the actor they cast for Celebrimbor is just so totally wrong. And there's a lot of examples of that in the show. Many examples of that in the show. But I think that's the one that cuts deep the most for me, is the casting of Celebrimbor. Bath Time says, because it's Bermed, that Galadriel is doing everything he has to, just proceed with the work and don't tell anyone. And then Inspector Elrond down at the river, that all felt a bit... Yeah, it felt off to me, but it's good that you're questioning that, but I don't think Sauron's corrupting her. I really genuinely don't think he is. I think that's just her. I think in a weird, fucked up way. Well, this is where we need to rationalize right now. Why doesn't Galadriel... Why doesn't she come clean to them all? Why doesn't she reveal Halbrand's true identity immediately? And the only thing that I can think of is that deep down she's still got feelings for him. And she feels like he's misunderstood and everything they've gone through together. She believes they're still good in him, maybe, or that they've got some kind of connection. That's the only thing that I can rationalize, and that's why she doesn't, drop him in the shit straight away. Elrond finds the scroll and weirdly just kind of puts 2 and 2 together straight away, despite not really knowing the context of why that scroll's there or the relevance of it. And he kind of has this really disappointed look, this knowing look with Galadriel, like, oh, he's Sauron. But nothing is spoken about. Why isn't this spoken about? This is insane. The elves have been at war with Sauron and Morgoth for years. Sauron's gone into hiding. They don't know about his whereabouts, and they finally do. And he's right there, and he's been in the very kingdom, and she hasn't... Galadriel's the real villain. She's pretty much been a villain this whole series. She has. Just the way she's just acted like a complete entitled cunt the whole series. I'm sorry, guys, there's no other word to describe her. That genuinely, she's been vile all the way through. She's talked about giving into the darkness. She wants to wipe out an entire race of people and is laughing about it and takes pleasure in it. She's just on a quest for vengeance the whole time. And she finds out the identity of the most evil entity in all of Middle-earth that could turn the tide, and doesn't tell a living soul about it. She's the villain. She's Galadriel. The good guys in this show are more of a villain than Halbrand. And I don't know if that was intentional from the writers, if they genuinely think that they're writing good protagonist characters, or if they've done it intentionally and it's like, oh no, so going back to that Superfans video, right, where it's like, oh, Sauron, I can change him. He's just misunderstood. He's just a bad boy. I can change him. Is that how they've written it? Have they written it where Sauron he's intentionally written to be misunderstood and kind of a flawed and sympathetic villain character? Because if that's the case, then oh my god, just stop adapting things. If that's the case, Sauron shouldn't be a sympathetic villain. Granted, there are elements of Melkor's character, and I guess you can kind of have this inference from the Bible, not to go on like a massive religious tangent or anything like that, but reading into the stories in the Bible and kind of shifting the focus a little bit. You know, God in the Bible, in some of the stories, is incredibly wrathful, especially the first Testament. Jesus Christ, the Old Testament, sorry. I'm getting the first age of the Old Testament mixed up. The Old Testament, he is slaughtering humans. He is wiping people off the face of the earth. And body count-wise, you'd probably go, well, God's technically probably killed more people than Satan. And to compare the Silmarillion, deep down, all Melkor wanted was the ability to create, was to be, you know, to leave his stamp on the world. And if you could do a reading on that, and you could make that a sympathetic character, that all he wanted was the power of his father to create and to kind of show off his artistic skills, I guess, bring something to the table. But then obviously when you read into the Silmarillion, the reason that Aule gets his creations the go-ahead and Melkor doesn't is because the intention. And, you know, when Aule got called out on creating the dwarves and kind of betraying the wills of Eru, he immediately repented and was willing to destroy his creation there and then. And it was in that compassion and that devotion to him that Eru saw and was like, no, okay, they shall be the children of my adoption. Whereas Melkor was very hateful, and it was his way or the highway, and there was seemingly no love or compassion for his creator. And that's the difference. But you could do a sympathetic writing on Melkor if you wanted to. You could. But you shouldn't, because, as I mentioned, the necessity of narrative, it's very black and white. It's all-encompassing evil, and it serves the narrative to be that way. Let's see. Complex villain is good, I think. I've always liked the stuff going on with Saruman instead of him just being a thrall. Yeah, no, Saruman's incredibly complex. Like, something that always bothered me about the Hobbit films, and even to a point, I ain't going to be mad at Christopher Lee because he's Christopher Lee. If he gets a bit of Lord of the Rings lore wrong, then hey, he's allowed to. But when he talked about in the Hobbit, like, oh, I'm really glad that I get to play Saruman before he was corrupted, before, you know, when he was still on the side of the angels. If you read the lore, Saruman was not good during the part of the Hobbit. Like, he had his own agendas, and he was actively looking for the whereabouts of the ring near the Gladden Fields. Sorry. He was out for his own agenda. He was looking for the One Ring, and he was concealing information from the White Council themselves to further his own ends. So Saruman wasn't good. And Saruman only chose to act and push back the Necromancer because he feared that Sauron was getting close to finding the One Ring. And once he knew whereabouts the location was, where it could possibly be, that's when he was like, right, let's get Sauron out of the picture now so I can focus my efforts on it. Like, Saruman wasn't good, but yeah, an incredibly complex character. And then even more complex when you find out in The Lord of the Rings that, you know, he ridiculed Gandalf all this time for the love of the Halfling's leaf, yet he's got barrels of it himself. I think he very much envied Gandalf and wanted to be like him and was jealous of his skills and his foresight. Then we get the forging of the Rings of Power right around this point, and we get a motif of the Eye of Sauron as it's being constructed. I actually didn't mind that. I thought, as visual signifiers go, fine. Throw it in there. The Elven Rings are forged. And it's, by the way, it's Galadriel's decision to make 3 Elven Rings. I never quite understood that. She was like, one can be controlled, two can divide, but three is just right. And perfectly balanced. I was like, three isn't really perfectly balanced, I guess. Unless you're going to equate it to scales and you're going to have like one side of the scales, the other side of the scales, and then the actual scale itself, and you've kind of got three, like this kind of holy trinity thing. But as far as I know from the lore, it certainly wasn't Galadriel's decision to make 3 elven rings. But, you know, they've got to give that agency to Galadriel, haven't they? And yeah. Yeah, and then the final shot is Sauron returning to Mordor. Motherfucker walked. One does not simply walk into Mordor, but Halbrand did it. It is. Where did he get that Sith robe from, by the way? Did he buy it from like a flea market or something on the way there? And he just looks menacingly evil and makes his way towards Mordor. So season 2 predictions, he's going to meet up with Adar. I think Adar may have asserted himself the ruler of the orcs. I think there's going to be a power struggle here with Halbrand showing up saying that I am Sauron. Adar clearly has beef with Sauron and wants to kill Sauron. I don't think they're going to kill Adar straight away. I think that Sauron's probably going to make him his thrall, make him his slave or his second in command or something like that. Adar might even go on to be, God forbid, they might, because it's kings of men, not elves, but do you reckon they could make Adar one of the 9? Do you reckon they will make Adar the mouth of Sauron? That would be wrong as well, because he should be a black Numenorian, but I don't know. It's going to be Halbrand met Darth Vader. Henceforth you shall be known as Darth Halbrand. He's going to meet with Adar, and Adar's clearly got all of the orcs on his side. As kind of free peoples, I guess they've got their own land. And Halbrand's going to be like, I quite like this pad. It seems suitably evil. It's got a volcano. It's kind of red and evil and menacing. It doesn't look particularly picturesque or nice. The only thing that will complete this, like we should totally build a tower right there. So get to it. I think the orcs are going to Adar's orcs are going to defect over to Sauron. I think Adar might escape, and then maybe try and join the elves or the good side again, or go out on his own. I don't know. They're going to keep Adar around, but there is going to be a struggle between him and Sauron, considering that he tried to kill Sauron. So he's either going to become a lackey, kind of like a General Hux kind of figure, or he's going to be, or he's going to escape and go out on his own ends. And then we get this awful credit song where the lyrics are really desperately trying to fit in with the melody of the show, and it doesn't fit, and it's the Ring poem. And I was kind of getting Gollum song vibes from the tone they were trying to strike. I think, you know, the final shot ending with the wide shot of Mordor and the volcano in the background, and then this really kind of sad, melancholy song that plays of this impending doom that's to follow. But on the flip side, Gollum's song is an absolutely outstandingly beautiful song with a wonderful melody to it. This one just felt really awkward. It felt like someone was improvising lyrics over a song, and the lyrics just didn't fit for me, just the melody. But it's the Ring poem, and out of all of these episodes, out of all 8 episodes, the lyrics of the song are the only thing that's directly off the page from Tolkien. That's really sad. Yeah, bad song and bad singer. Yeah, that kind of draws the music to a close for me as well. I've been really disappointed with this soundtrack. There's been occasional bits, as I mentioned, like I liked the dwarf theme from when Khazad-dûm was first introduced, but that theme never seemed to get a reprise or used ever again. Aspects of the Numenorian song were fine, but there's nothing particularly memorable from the whole soundtrack. And when they announced that Howard Shore and Bear McCreary were doing the soundtrack, I was over the moon. I thought that's a great mix. You've got well, Howard Shore needs no introduction, and Bear McCreary's done some fantastic music, especially recently with God of War. But the music just seems as lackluster as the actual writing on the show. Yeah, Ecthelion says music was quite underwhelming generally, to be honest. Bath Time says he liked Poppy's song. I was resistant to the whole not all those who wander are lost coming at this point in the narrative. But if I'm going to listen to just Tolkien-inspired music in my everyday, I might listen to Poppy's song again if I'm out walking. You know, I tend to listen to a lot of Clamavi de Profundis. I listen to music from The Lord of the Rings, the musical, like The Roads Go Ever On and On. What else? Lothlorien, Wander, which were all from the Lord of the Rings musical. Beautiful songs and just really get me in that Lord of the Rings mood. So I might add Poppy's song to like a playlist if I'm walking around, but yeah. Well, guys, I think that brings it to a close. It doesn't feel right. And I feel, you know what? I feel like Peter Jackson on the last day of shooting when he's filming Pickups with Elijah Wood. And he's just like, oh, let's just go for one more take. Let's just go for one more, even more sad, even because he doesn't want to end. And I'm kind of like that with a live stream tonight, because I know that when I end this, there's probably going to be a hiatus on the Tolkien content. As I mentioned, I'd be down for going live next Friday for kind of like a season 1 recap and just, you know, reviewing it as a whole. Any positives, any negatives, but I don't know if you guys would be interested in that, because I mean we've kind of talked about everything now, and I can probably do my wrap up in today's one. So if you guys aren't particularly fussed by that, I'll get my Friday nights off again, which is nice because I'm up very early for work today. I'm actually up in 7 hours from now. So I'd get my Friday nights free, and we can sort of shelve it maybe for a month or so, which will allow me to just sort of get things in place. And then December, as I mentioned, it's the 10th anniversary of the Hobbit on an Unexpected Journey, so there'll be content on that. I'll probably have a review out for the Hobbit on an Unexpected Journey. I might do a watch along. And if you guys haven't seen it or you're interested, and this is where I get to sell my own stuff now, well, not sell it, but in the description, the link to my Hobbit fan edit. If you guys haven't checked it out, I'd really recommend that you do so. Or if you haven't got time to get around to it, maybe I could do a live stream of that, because I actually haven't done a live watch along of that, or a commentary or an editor's commentary on that just yet. So that could be really fun to do. So that'll all be around December. Of course, it's the 20th anniversary of the Two Towers, so I'll be doing a live watch along of that. And if I'm doing Two Towers, then I'm going to do Fellowship of the Ring, and I'm probably going to do Return of the King as well. Although I don't know what I'll be doing for the 20th anniversary of Return of the King next year. There's lots of other Tolkien stuff we can do. As I said, there's Russian the Hobbit. There's all of these different incarnations. There's all of the animated films. I've got the BBC radio drama cassette series, which I haven't actually listened all of. So maybe I could do reviews of that kind of stuff later down the line as well. Yeah, there's plenty of Tolkien stuff. So don't go anywhere, you know. But it's going to be weird not jumping on this week to week. I will say that. And although it's a terrible series, and I'm so thankful that Rings of Power is over, and it's just kind of a travesty, and I just want to put this series behind me, pretend it never happened, and move on with my life, and go back and watch The Lord of the Rings a million more times, and go back and read The Lord of the Rings again, and the Silmarillion, and the Unfinished Tales, the Histories of Middle-earth. It pleases me that people are going back to Tolkien's writings now, or going back to the films and reminding them of what good literature is, and the details of the lore, and just what good movies are. Lord Oakenshield says you could also make a live video for the 10th anniversary of the first Hobbit film. There's a lot to say about. Yeah, that's what I mentioned. Yeah, no, there's plenty I would do. Yeah, I could either do a review on that, or I could just do a look back 10 years on, how the film's aged over 10 years, the impact of the film, if any, of the trilogy, and maybe a live watch along on it as well. Because it's been a while since I've actually watched the original version of the film. I'm so used to my edited version now. I prefer my edited version, to be honest, if I'm watching The Hobbit. But yeah, we can do some stuff. We can do some stuff. To sum up my thoughts on the Rings of Power, just with all of that power and money that Amazon have behind projects, to have what's the word I'm looking for? To have the privilege of being able to adapt Tolkien's works. The writing team they get on board that say, oh no, Tolkien didn't know what he was talking about, we can do it our own way. The constant addition of modern day politics and agenda politics all the way through it. The complete decimation of Tolkien's works. This show was an absolute it was and is an absolute travesty to the legacy and memory of Tolkien. And to have the gall in the credits to say, based on the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, there is nothing even remotely based on the works of J.R.R. Tolkien with this. It's based on Tolkien in name only. The fact that you have characters called Galadriel and Miriel and Numenor and things like that. You have characters in name, but none of them in action or from the page. None of the events of this happened, and if they did happen, they're either spread out over a much longer period or happen in completely different ways. This is the most expensive fan fiction in history, and to me, this will go down as one of the worst TV shows ever put to screen. There's very few occasional scenes where it's nice New Zealand scenery or something like that, but conceptually, the design, the music, the acting, the script, everything about this is fundamentally wrong. And the hubris of saying we're going to write the book that Tolkien never did, I hate it. I hate it so much with every fiber of my being. And I've just really... Taralinian says, I've tried downloading your edit of The Hobbit, but the process freezes about halfway through the download. I'm not sure why that's the case. There is a link to view it on FireMerc, though, which I'd recommend. So either maybe just watch it on Google Drive. Try and watch it on either of those, because I know for sure it definitely works on those, and that's kind of streamable on FireMerc. You can just kind of watch it on the timeline and pause it and all of that stuff. So I'd recommend maybe watching it on there if you can. But yeah, I'm not sure why the download freezes. I might be in the process of working on a third version of the edit, but for right now, that second version's my director's cut. That's the one that I'm happy with. But I might make some... Lord Oakenshield, I know you've made some changes, so I might do a third version and just get that up on Google Drive, and just have that as an alternate version for people that want that version. But yeah, I just want to say before I sign off tonight, a massive thank you to all of you that have subscribed, that have joined the community, that have joined me week to week, that you've picked my channel to watch coverage on this. It really means the world to me. And even if I had no one on, I'd still have been talking to a camera. But the fact that all of you have chimed in, we've got the likes of Ecthelion, Taralenian, absolute Tolkien scholars, and can just come out with all of the text and everything. And it's been an absolute pleasure reading out direct quotes from Tolkien himself on the live stream. Bath Time, it's been great to have you on as well, and sharing very different opinions, but still, I can't even imagine what that's like, just jumping on a live stream where you actually like something, but the person is just talking nothing but, is just talking shit about it for the whole stream, but you've still joined in, and yeah, we've had some great conversations, man. So I love that you've stuck around, and it's been great. Lord Oakenshield, Will, we go way back, don't we, with Vimeo and everything like that. So yeah, just thank you for finding the channel and for sticking with me and getting through it together with this. It's been brilliant. And of course, all the other people that have signed on at some point as well. We've had the likes of Kerry as well. Everything in Middle-earth for joining me. I'd love to do some more videos with Everything in Middle-earth, actually. So I'm going to try and get some more collaborations with him, definitely. But yeah, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone that's joined me. It really means the world to me. And subscribers are going up, which is very nice. I've recently just hit 200 subscribers. I think last time I checked, I'm currently on 205, 206. So we're building this community. Oh god, my voice is going, guys. I need to sign off in a second. Let me just take a quick swig before I do the outro. But yeah, the subscriber count's going up very nicely. So all I can ask you guys is just please spread the word as much as you can. Let's keep building this community. Because I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere, and the content is still going to come thick and fast. So this is where I hand over. Please consider subscribing to the channel for more movie reviews, discussions, and live streams. The recent release this week is Halloween Ends, which I will be watching at some point when I can get to it, and there'll be a review on that definitely. Also, I've got Andor as well, so that's kind of like the new TV reviews that are going to continue for the next few weeks at least. Excuse me. And also, I'll be starting my James Cameron retrospective. Now, initially, I did have this starting from Sunday. I think something has unfortunately come up now for me on Sunday, so I'm going to have to park the first episode of that. But that will be the next retrospective. For more information on that, go to my Twitter. Give me a follow on there. Follow me at Hobbit Fan Editor. I'll post all the times that I go live, as well as what you can expect from the channel. And just a bunch of random memes, random GIFs and stuff like that along the way. In the meantime, if you haven't done so already and you're discovering this video or you're watching this video after the fact, let me know your thoughts on the Rings of Power. Positive, negative, in the middle, positives and negatives on both sides. You know, let me know. I love hearing from you guys, and I try and reply to all of your comments as well. I do read all of your comments, believe me. I really do. Yeah, so what can you expect next week? So again, before this point, I might have a Halloween Ends review out, but the next scheduled one for sure is going to be Thursday the 20th of October, where I'm talking about Star Wars Andor. Hopefully I'll be on with JX Editor again for that one. And at some point, I'll also be jumping on and beginning my James Cameron retrospective, where I'm going to be reviewing every single thing that James Cameron's directed, from his first short film of Xenogenesis to his first feature film, Piranha 2: The Spawning, all the way up to his recent film, which will be coming out this December, which will be Avatar 2: The Way of Water. There's plenty of films on that list that are among my favorite films of all time, from Terminator, Terminator 2, True Lies, Aliens. So they'll be really fun to revisit and to talk about. And of course, some new ones that, well, films that I haven't seen before. I've never seen The Abyss. I've never seen Piranha 2. I've never seen any of his documentary stuff. So that'll be a really fun retrospective to do. I want to do more of these retrospectives as well. Now that James Bond has finished, if you haven't done so already, you can check out my latest review, which is No Time to Die. That's up on the channel now. I've got a complete playlist of all 25 James Bond films on there now. But I'm looking forward to moving on to other retrospectives. So I've got James Cameron already in the pipeline, and I've got one that I've got planned for January as well, which hopefully someone will be joining me on those reviews in January. So watch this space. Plenty of stuff coming to the channel. Final farewells to all of you. I will not say do not weep, for not all tears are an evil. But sadly, well, not on the shores of the sea, comes the end of our fellowship for now. But we will return. We will reunite for more Tolkien content. It's been an absolute pleasure. Please, none of you, please, just don't be a stranger. You can message me on Twitter at any time, and I'd be grateful for it. It'd be great. It'd be great to carry on the conversation with you guys in the meantime. Ecthelion says, congratulations to more growth. Yeah, fingers crossed. Hope so. I really do. And he says, I'll let others know about your channel. Well, I really appreciate that, man. Thank you. Yeah, just keep spreading the word. Lord Oakenshield, bye, Chris. Take care of yourself. I will do so, my friend, and hopefully all you do as well. Be excellent. Stay awesome to each other, and I will catch you on the next live video, guys. Take care. Namarie.